Hey everyone, welcome to another Sounds Profitable Product Deep Dive. I'm really excited to introduce Tony Simmons, the CEO of Sonnant tonight, and we're going to be walking through the Sonnant platform, specifically the Smart Ads Suite. So Tony, welcome to the Product Deep Dive series.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me, Brian.
Yeah, I'm really excited to dig into this with you because at Sounds Profitable, we do use Sonnant and we've used a lot of the early iterations of it and we have a lot of fun with it. So Gavin on our team uses it to upload our audio content where all of our audio content is. So we do our narrated articles and everything and uses that to find links to other pieces of our content. So when we're writing our articles, we can make sure we do backlinks into everything on there. And you guys have come a long way since you've been more like an audio library. And today, I believe we're going to dig into the Smart Ads product, which honestly, I've had a blast looking at so far. So I'm going to pass it over to you to tell us a little bit about Sonnant, and then we'll dive into the product.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks very much again. Look, it's all about, for us, monetization and management of content. You want to be able to do it effectively, and you need to be able to do it efficiently. And whether that's podcast, radio, or even video where there's spoken word, that's what we've always focused on, as you know. And the holy grail for everyone at the moment is, monetizing this audio content, making a bigger audience, making more money. And for us, where's the industry going? There's a lot of digital transformation going on. Everyone's seen the rise of ChatGPT and started to think about automation a bit more realistically in this space. And we've been doing this for a couple of years. So we're really now applying this tech to the use cases, and smart ad markers is right on point for us. Because the way we see it, the internet hasn't changed since its advent. Money comes from impressions, from downloads, from eyeballs, and in audio from these things. So our job is to make sure that we unlock and unpack your content. You create great content. We want to make it hit the mark and monetize it, so you're getting the maximum amount of potential revenue out of everything you create.
That's awesome. And so today, where does your product sit? Like, where does Sonnant sit? Is it on the hosting side, the ad serving side?
Yeah, look, we like to think of it as a command center, which using APIs can turn voice into data, which can drive any of those capabilities. Because once you've got the voice in Sonnant, we create a lot of metadata, and as you use it for one use case for being able to find and surface and search for content, others are using it to create ad markers and pushing those ad markers into their SSP, so then their SSP can really talk effectively to their DSP. So that's about brand suitability and brand safety. So all of these use cases sort of come off Sonnant as a central hub, and it can drive this data into any data-driven data lake or platform or system that people are using.
Well, that's awesome because so much of podcasting is actually built API first. I've always been really impressed with that. A long history of mobile advertising and a lot of other gray areas in the ad tech space that have been very against that. And in podcasting, it feels like that's the truth of it, right? There are some pieces of technology that are great at pushing out, some are pulling in, and some do the whole thing. And so with Sonnant, just to get us like level set here, a publisher usually is the starting point of this, would upload their content into Sonnant or make their RSS feed available for Sonnant to take the audio, transcribe it into text, and then use different basically data sets that I'd love to hear more about to augment.
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah, and the data, the content can come in not just through RSS or uploading manually. It can be plugged into broadcast platforms with a webhook waiting for new content to arrive there and automatically bring it in via API. And then when it comes into the system, there's a range of things that are happening that turn that content into something data-driven and structured. So you've got tagging, you've got transcribing, and then a bit more sophisticated, your categorization, contextualizing, drawing out entities, people, places, organizations. And all of these things appear almost as layers of metadata, and these bits of metadata can then be used to drive functions within Sonnant, create a clip that's about Barack Obama, for example. That's easy to do because we know where he's being talked about. And then those clips can be pushed to your social platforms or to another platform where you're going to syndicate them out from. So it's really, can sit ubiquitous across all of your systems, and that metadata helps unpack the real value of the content.
So the core is taking audio content and turning it into text through transcription to augment it. What I really like about all of that is that's where we've been pushing since I started in podcasting. I mean, the lowest hanging fruit we've had, people do negative and positive targeting off of the titles of episodes or the episode descriptions, but those are limited and those are manually entered in there. You might forget about an uncouth joke you make in the middle of your podcast, and you not put it in the episode description. But by transcribing it, these things are elevated. They're visible on there. And what's cool about that too is one of the things that Tom talked about in our safe and sound research on brand safety and suitability was that people in podcasting should start using tools like we're going to talk about here to pre-screen their content and determine, maybe I should cut that bit. Maybe that thing that flags as negative isn't necessary in there. So by taking this and transcribing it, getting that deeper metadata, everything becomes visible. So we're not just talking about keywords. We're talking about, you mentioned sentiment analysis. And what are the two ways that you grade against brand safety and suitability or categorize this?
Yeah, look, we've taken a dual approach to it. So we implemented the GARM model, and then we use the IAB model as well, because the two together to us provides a much greater safety net and much greater contextualization of a piece of content. So, you know, if you were talking about something gruesome like a severed arm or something like that, that could be in the context of a news story. Now, in and of itself, it's gruesome, but in the context of news, that may not kick out any advertisers from wanting to be there. But if you know under IAB categorization that that's a sensitive topic, that's almost like a safety net to say, hey, you know, you're happy with that as a piece of news. We're just flagging it because it is sensitive, because it talks about, you know, a dismembered arm. Maybe you don't want to advertise on that. So now you've got this ability to filter and have that safety net to say, actually, maybe we don't want to be there because we're advertising to kids, and that's a little bit grim for them.
Yeah, I mean, these things, being able to bubble it up, even just to look at after the fact or to filter beforehand or to make adjustments, you layer that onto attribution, you layer that onto other things to show you the success of the campaign, and you can determine, was it worth pushing into that type of content? So all really interesting things here. I have a fatal flaw when I do these things because I know kind of the direction you want to go with some of this. I am trying to dig through all the pieces of this and have you explain it, but I believe you prepared a few case studies to walk through, like use cases of the platform that will drive through how someone can utilize this platform better.
I think what's really interesting about the way we worked is we're really trying to be customer driven and product led. So the use cases we've got aren't us sitting in a room going, wouldn't it be nice if we could solve this problem? The use cases we've got are customers at scale going with a lot of content. This is going to either help us remove overhead, make it quicker, make it more accurate, or it's going to help us drive revenue. And whilst we've, you know, as an industry sat around going, this is a problem, maybe we could fix this, maybe we could fix that, the real writing on the wall is when a customer says, this is a problem we want to solve and we can quantify it. So all the use cases we've got are actual customers who have seen improvement in either their workflow efficiency, their automation, and therefore driven cost out, or started to use smart ad markers to improve the CPM or get more impressions. And that's the bottom line.
That's great. Let's dive into them.
Okay, so look, you know, use case number one is pretty straightforward. It's just using automation to place smart ad markers. Now, you talked before about this uncouth, joke that might be in a podcast. That's a really interesting point for Sonnant because there's a number of things that could happen there. That could end up being a clip because it's, you know, someone might laugh at it wildly and it might be a really great joke. So that could be a really good clip. That could also be, at the end of that, a really good place to put an ad because, you know, people are engaged, they're at their, most intent, and then you run an ad, they're going to stay on board because they're in a happy mood. Sonnant looks at all of these factors as to where should we put an ad, who's talking, are they laughing, did it have good energy, as you say, sentiment, and across the whole episode, You can say, I want 5 ads or I want one every 10 minutes. Sonnant automatically scores every break and says, this is where you should place your markers. So what it's doing is removing the pain of someone having to sit there going through this slow process. It's quite often inaccurate, inconsistent across different producers and different shows. People leave. It relies on people being retrained. All of this pain's taken away by Sonnant being able to point to every place an ad marker could be and then just putting it in. So making it uncomplicated and economical for customers.
And I think I simplified this a little bit too much beforehand. So I was talking a lot about the audio becoming text, but you just said like the tone, the fact that they're laughing, the fact that they like are excited and happy. Those are all factors that you pull in.
Absolutely, yeah. So I suppose the natural thing that most people ask, like yourself, is, how does it work? And really what we've done is developed a very sophisticated algorithm over a number of years with hundreds of thousands of hours of content, which is really a predictive AI tool. The starting point though is the customer. How many ads do you want? What's the sort of ad marker rules that you want for this piece of content? And then Sonnant can tell you within a window, what's the best place? So what's it looking at? Has the topic finished? So is there been a change in topic? And that's measured by a delta in topic. Is it the end of a sentence? Does the energy drop off and there's a bit of a gap, a natural pause before someone joins in again? Who was the host? Who was the guest? Has the host asked a question and has that question been completed? Was there laughter after that? Because you don't want to go, well, it's finished, but everyone's, laughing, so we'll put one there. Got to wait for that energy level in the studio to drop down. Then there's non-verbal. Some producers use a little audio mark or a jingle. These sorts of things. If they're there, they're already natural indicators that we can leverage. And then you've got your sort of natural pauses where people stop and think, and all of these things are built into the algorithm. They're all scored and easily put forward in a couple of minutes after the content's run through Sonnant.
So now, not necessarily a problem I have because I can't let empty space go unfilled, but let's say that you added a marker because it sounded like it was the end of a sentence or the end of a segment that we were doing, but I just paused too long to think about it. And for whatever reason, the editors left that giant pause in there. Is there a way for me to flag that and say like, this marker isn't right and please expect this type of weird behavior from me in the future? So
in the initial days of training the system, we stumbled across a piece of content, an Australian piece of content with Arnie, the Terminator, being interviewed on a radio show. And something got lost in translation when he told a joke. And he finished the joke and the audience sat there in stunned silence. Not realising that it was a joke. And then Arnie came back and said, hey, that's a joke. And everyone kind of went, well, we didn't get it. Now the system found this huge gap and thought, great place to put an ad. But it actually wasn't, because the joke was that no one got the joke ultimately. So this is the sort of thing that differentiates us from, just a pretty bland, we call it smart because it's looking at the context. It's trying to understand what happened after this pause. Was there something related? And the topic hadn't changed, and it probably hadn't changed with such a strong score that the system will go, actually, that's still related. So just because it's a natural pause doesn't mean that the ad marker should go there, because there might be other things decreasing that score, such as context.
That's great. I think a lot of the first tools that came out were basically like every 5 minutes or so, look for a blank spot. The idea that this is something that's adaptive and that you can give it feedback, and it sounds like it kind of will improve the model and potentially give it something unique to me when it's scoring my stuff in the future. That's really awesome to be able to have that level of input. I think my perspective is that the AI technology is really in the last year and a half advanced enough to feel like we can adapt with it in real time. And I think that's kind of popped up out of nowhere very quickly. But before that, it was very, very rigid. So very excited to hear that.
We're an enterprise team, so we don't just say, hey, out of the box, here it is, good luck with it. We have data scientists, customer success people that work with each one of our customers to understand the nuances of any show or any producer so that they can quickly be built into the algorithm. But the human in the loop factor for us is vitally important, because in this industry, people treat their content as art, and it should be, and therefore everyone's nuances are going to be treated differently to the next producer. By building a system that does have machine learning in there, we can quickly adapt. Hey, that didn't work, or we'd like more of this, or could you listen for this, or we prefer not to have a marker here. That can be built within a couple of days so that you get such precision to the producer's needs within our platform. And so it's AI plus a human. It's not AI instead of a human, but the overall impact once you've got that human feedback is pure automation that's delivering precise deliverables.
That's great. So what is use case number 2?
So you've got experimentation. So, the cost of an ad ops person, be it $40 or $20 or $100 an hour, is currently the bar to experimenting and trying to find that premium sort of economic position of maximising revenue. So we've got, because our cost of doing this is, a couple of dollars versus hundreds of dollars, if you've got 10 shows you run it through Sonnant, you could now say, I want an ad marker every 7 minutes. I want it every 10 minutes. I want 10 minutes. I want to place 2 ads or 3 ads. After 30 days, I want to change the profile of what ads are going to be there. So I want to get my rusted on listeners in the first 30 days getting a premium experience. And after that, those who come along might get still a great experience, but they might get a few more ads. And then you've got, like the old TV days of getting someone hooked on a show, and towards the end of the show, you start to increase the number of ads being served, or decrease the time between ads. You can start to do this now because the cost of changing the profile and pushing it automatically through the system is very low. You can now start to measure and track, actually that show should have a different profile to this show. These listeners don't mind getting 2 ads or 3 ads. These listeners do. Once you know that incremental change to revenue in the right direction is very quick. And so by automation, by taking this feedback, we've seen customers be able to experiment, and it's driven the amount of revenue they can get from one show up really quickly.
I like what you're saying there. I've been talking with a lot of people in the audio drama space, and one of the things that I said to them, like if they have 10 episodes, right, the first 4 episodes, maybe 2, maybe 3, but probably 4, can be lighter in ads, because they can't start at episode 5, right? So you can ease into it. Episode 1 is always just one sponsor, and episode 2 could be a sponsor and a callback to them, and episode 3 can be 3 ad units or whatnot, and episode 4 can go to your full ad load. But by doing something like that, creating that environment that says this path is the ideal path to onboard somebody, right? That's really powerful. You create that pattern to get them in there, get them comfortable with it, build up around it, and move on. The first, 30, 60, 90 days of a show are always considered premium. And maybe the choice is to limit the number of ad slots there. And then what you're talking about is being able to increase them as time goes on, as it goes from your net new to your full catalog or even back catalog. You're able to change those ad markers there. And we're not just talking like, which some hosting platforms allow you to do, bulk changing all of them to a set marker. You're saying build a profile. This show has 7 ads now in the hour and a half length of it. They should each be around these areas, but every episode is going to be unique. So the tool specifically finds the best break for them to give me that opportunity, or flags that maybe we didn't shut up enough in this episode and it's probably not going to fit as we expected. We need to take that into consideration.
And what's been really interesting in going through this kind of process with customers is, again, back to people treating content like a piece of art. Producers will probably underserve with advertising. They'll look for places where it's, so obvious to them where they need to put an ad, and the machine can be dispassionate about it. Now, what you expect to see, or what people expected to see, was people switching off. If you serve too many ads, people are going to switch off, they're going to churn out, they're going to do something else. In some shows that's true, but in others it's not. And so what we've been able to do is increase the ad load without losing any audience. And that's meant, in some instances, doubling revenue for a show by being dispassionate about the data. Placing good ads, still good ad markers, so it's not jarring, but increasing a bit of ad load over time, it just drives revenue, and it doesn't always translate that more ads equals more switch off. What it usually translates is more ads or better placed ads equals more revenue. So it's been interesting to see that actually translate into actual numbers. And if everyone wins, so the audience is still getting what they want, they don't mind hearing it because the content's great, and the publishers are obviously increasing revenue. That's exactly where everyone wants to be, right?
Yeah. And I mean, the things to highlight here is this is like bulk but personal. And what you're saying there in the ad load and not affecting listeners, we actually covered that in another study too, which was really great. Our After These Messages, which was all about host read endorsed versus host read scripted versus announcer read scripted. And basically what we really found out was that the ad load and I guess the ad load overall was not a determining factor of someone dropping off. If the content was good and the ads are good and well placed, people's tolerance is incredibly high in podcasting. But a bad placement and a bad ad and bad content, any one of those things can sink your ship. So a bad ad isn't usually going to convince somebody to leave or stop listening to a podcast, but consistent bad ads, poorly placed, will. No matter how good the content is.
And I think the biggest driver, and I remember Tom speaking about this last year in Sweden at Radio Days, was bad content is the problem, right? So if your content's terrible, you could have no ads and people will switch off. If you've got great content that's compelling, everyone's used to advertising. People understand that that's part of the ecosystem and part of content delivery these days. So for the publishers, I want to maximize the revenue to a point where I don't piss anyone off. They don't sort of leave. And it's being able to experiment, being able to find that place and then deploy it effectively at scale, even grabbing some of the inventory and putting in new markers for that. And that's another use case. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself.
Well, let's dive into that one.
Well, just before that, I was going to talk about how moving into a programmatic area, you can have host-read, baked-in ads existing alongside programmatic advertising. So what we've built at the behest of a couple of customers is the ability to identify host-read ads. Now, if it's coming from a system, broadcast system like an Omni, for example, we can easily identify that's where an ad's been inserted and drop that, put together a whole episode. But if it's an older episode or it came from a different studio where they didn't have the luxury of these systems, what we've been able to do is say, run Sonnant across this episode and tell us where there's any host-read ads. Now, once you've done that, our users have a number of options. They can either put an ad before the host-read ad, they can put a marker after the host-read ad, a mid-roll, or they can even delete that ad entirely and go to a full programmatic suite. So the identification of baked-in ads, it's a very complex piece of technology. Again, took a while to train on that, but there are variances in the words per minute and the pitch levels and all of these little nuances that a machine's excellent at listening for, can identify and then give our customers the option of saying, keep it, delete it, advertise however they want in alignment with it.
I think that's really cool because there's not a lot of systems out there that focus on identifying host-read ads. It's next to no hosting platform. I believe maybe one hosting platform has the ability to identify in a piece of content where the host-read ad is, even identify who the advertiser is so that it can be taken into consideration. And what you're talking about is the ways to identify that. I assume that adds to the metadata profile of that, because now that adds part of the content and you can flag that appropriately. And then you're talking about being able to sandwich that ad in with those additional markers, which is the perfect break because you baked it in there. So why not tag another one on? Even that augment for old inventory, right? If somebody has a show with 4 baked in ads and they want to do something with it, they can, like you just said, they can just replace all the old baked in ads and now have 2 ad slots or 3 ad slots there. Or if they want to leave them in, now they know exactly where to augment, making their old inventory that wasn't earning them any more money.
Now, what you've done is you've actually jumped ahead to my 4th use case, which is reclaiming your inventory. So what you've got is exactly as you described. You've got inventory where there are host-read ads. And look, people have got different obligations around advertising, but where those obligations have expired and you've got content that's still getting impressions, it's still got an audience, the ability to go delete all host-read ads, put in ad markers, is now very real. And instead of having someone sitting there again, $25 an hour, going through, trying to delete it, putting in new markers, Sonnant can do 500 episodes in an hour, push all those markers, new markers into your existing platform, and it's done. It's cost effective, it's economical, it's seamless, and the good news is it's proven across a number of customers and use cases. So we're super excited about that because it means all this inventory that's still got an audience and still being loved is potentially ripe for programmatic. And the beauty of it is if you do it today and you put these markers in, it's going to be available for you in March. The revenue is going to be accruing in April. So it compounds every month that you've got these markers in. You're starting to create revenue streams from existing content. And for us, it's great because that's our business case right there. I mean, we've got a number of different ways to generate money for our customers, but being able to say, look, after 2 weeks with the amount of impressions you're getting, you're going to be back in positive territory. I mean, the numbers don't lie. As I said at the start, it's all about clicks and impressions. And if you're generating cents per click or per impression or per listen, that's what we're helping to do.
I like how all the different models that you laid out also seem to imply like different length of relationship with you. Like that last one, for example, it seems like I could work with you. Like, let's say I have a 2000 episode show and, I was like, baked in worked for a while, but I got an offer from an agency and they're really interested in buying everything full catalog, dynamically inserted. And I just don't have the person to do it. I can take all those episodes, run them through with you, push out exactly what I need back to my hosting platform with all the markers and stuff and be ready to go in a handful of days. And that could be where we end our relationship. And that's not a bad thing. That allows me to solve that problem right then and there. And personally, I'm a big fan of that because there's so many products in this space that are vying for everybody's like full attention. Now, there's tons of reasons why people should work with you on a monthly basis, setting up the automatic hooks, using it so that the second a show hits whatever they consider outside their prime period, automatically doing that by adding more ads to it, focusing on the contextualization for targeting, all of that, right? But there are very few products in podcasting today that are about maybe I can use it once, see how effective it is, and then come back for it consistently. So much of what we do is about the ongoing. It's about the future. What you're talking about is the opportunity to focus on that, but your test case is everybody's back catalog. Like there's no lose with that because there are so many programmatic partners out there. While demand continues to increase and things are slow on certain aspects of it, if you go from no dynamically inserted inventory, elevated programmatically, to full back catalog of it, you will earn some money. You will earn enough money, very likely, to be able to cover the costs of that one-time process and show you the value of doing it automatically going forward.
And I agree. Whilst everyone's desire in our business software is to get recurring revenue, we're happy to take an inventory and put it through the system as a one-off. What happens though is that people see the product and see the value in it and start to put their new content through it. And also because every item that goes through the system is tagged, is categorized, is made available via indexing for search, the ability to surface archival content for other purposes, to jump in on conversations when it's relevant on Twitter or create snippets really quickly for something that became topical again, means that there's even more miles, there's even more leverage in this content.
Yeah. That's all the added value from it. I completely agree. My focus on the one-off was to highlight the fact that in this current market, the ability to test this out in such a robust way, instead of like a small sample, you could literally test your entire back catalog. And as you're figuring it out, obviously you're accruing new episodes that aren't making that shift. You're doing it manually. And so you get to see in real time what automatically happened and was very straightforward and very quick and fit your needs, versus the manual nature, and see which one earns you more. It becomes pretty clear. So what I'm really excited about, Tony, is that for the rest of this year, we're going to be doing 3 more deep dives with you. And Sonnant is so different today than it was when we started working together. We barely touched on the like you just said, like the social clips. I get emails when pieces of my content are related to active topics or hashtags on Twitter to let me know if there's something connected to it that I should be engaging in. And the social clips, all of those things are really exciting. We just covered one of those features, Smart Ads, which basically in the last 9 months came out of conversations with your clients about their specific needs. So over the course of this year, we're going to really be able to dig into all of that feedback, all of those new exciting features that you're going to be launching.
And look, I think there's another thing that we didn't even touch on is, radio and sponsors being able to turn broadcast to podcast and being able to give the sponsors almost another bite of the cherry, or for the content creators to be able to charge more for a sponsor to have their brand in both the broadcast and the podcast. There's additional revenue streams, and some of our customers, you only have to look at the public results, seeing digital revenues grow. We're proud to say we've been central in some of that digital transformation, because this metadata and the AI is where the industry has to go, because the cost of being competitive in an ever-increasing competitive content market with humans doing, sometimes mind-numbing labour, is expensive. So the stuff that makes sense to automate, we do exceptionally well. And then the next generation of AI is just going to be so exciting, as people have started to see with, as I said before, ChatGPT, where this can go, being able to ask a system to stitch me together a whole episode based on these topics. And I mean, I'm saying it's going to be possible because we're already working on this sort of stuff, but it's going to be an exciting journey.
Yeah. And to highlight on that broadcast to podcast thing, there are more partners that offer that's proprietary, that requires you to use their hosting platform, that are owned by big media companies and big broadcasters. You're one of very few sources that offer that as a fully independent thing, as a standalone solution, meaning that those people can take that asset and maybe it's not a podcast. Maybe it's just going to be something that's in their streaming player, right? All the different things that they can do with it. Maybe they kick it right over to YouTube. So many different options there. What you're doing is you're figuring it out and pulling in that data and focusing on the metadata, adding more metadata and combining it into creating a new show out of what's sent over through the stream.
We're dispassionate. It's our customers' content, so it's our customers' metadata. You own all the metadata, and our job is to make it, well, I was going to say sing for you, but, talk for you. There you go. So,
Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us on this product deep dive. What's really exciting is that Tony and his team are planning to be all over the place at every podcast event that they can make it out to, and are always available for a custom demo. And like I said, this stuff works very clearly in a test environment for you to see it with your own eye. And prepare for some really amazing product deep dives from Sonnant and our other partners over the rest of this year. Thanks for being with us, Tony.
Thanks, Bryan.